From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
I'm Mike Dennison in Helena. Coming up, one last look at Montana's pivotal governor's race.
Is likely to be the last poll of Montana races to be released before the election is out. Coming up, what the MSU Billings poll is telling us about Tuesday's races.
Also later, Lieutenant Governor Mike Cooney joining us live, chatting with him, the first of two parts looking at that governor's race.
I think
Matt's
that's
joining us
a lot
live
ahead
right
this
now.
hour.
Hey, keep an eye out for the sidewalks this morning. Some of the melted snow yesterday was able to refreeze on the area sidewalks.
And you've had personal experience?
I do have personal experience. It's just because I wasn't watching where I was going. It was also 2:30 in the morning. But still, watch those roadways. There may be some icy roads on the side streets. Temperatures holding into the 30s this morning. Pleasant conditions. We do have a little bit of cloud cover. Our daytime highs warming up into the 50s. You get a little higher step-off point with temperatures eventually into the mid-30s as you're heading into the mid-morning. That'll allow us to really jump into the 50s for the afternoon. We do have a cold front moving in. I've got more on that, of course, in just a few minutes.
Well, just days remain until Election Day, and more than 427,000 ballots have already been cast by Montanans in early voting.
But that doesn't mean the candidates are slowing down, and that includes Montana's pivotal race for governor.
MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison takes one last look at the final push and the campaign money that are fueling this contest.
The race for Montana's open governor's seat is considered competitive, but most polls have shown Republican Congressman Greg Gianforte with the lead. He's also spent $7.5 million of his own money on the campaign, a point that Democrat Mike Cooney is using as a point of criticism these final days.
He's trying to buy this election. It's that simple. This out-of-state, out-of-touch, wannabe plutocrat has spent more than $17 million trying to buy our elections since Governor Bullock and I beat him the first time he tried to purchase the governor's office.
The Gianforte campaign says his personal investment means he's not for sale, and they note that outside groups like the Democratic Governors Association and Montana Conservation Voters have spent about $13 million helping Cooney. The Republican Governors Association also has spent at least $8 million helping Gianforte. But when it comes to money from actual donors, the two men are about even, raising $3.4 million each through mid-October. About 80% of Gianforte's donor cash is from Montanans, while Cooney is getting 2/3 of his haul from inside the state. Cooney, however, has a lot more donors and donations, in excess of 53,000, while Gianforte is at 11,500, so his average donation is much larger. In the coming days, Gianforte is hitting the trail with national figures, like Texas U.S. Senator Ted Cruz in Billings and Hamilton, and Donald Trump Jr. in Kalispell on Saturday. Gianforte's message is a consistent one. He'll bring a private sector business approach to running government.
The plan's pretty straightforward. It focuses on a top-to-bottom regulatory review to keep regulations that protect public safety and the environment, but remove the excessive ones, lowering the tax burden across the board, property taxes and income taxes, and then working with industry.
Lieutenant Governor Cooney goes on the road starting Friday, everywhere from Billings to Fort Benton to Butte and places in between. He's hitting familiar Democratic themes.
I'm running to expand access to public lands, defend affordable health care, and invest in quality public education for all Montanans.
This race is considered the most competitive governor's contest in the nation. But how close is it, really? I'm guessing at least 100,000 Montanans have yet to vote, and they'll be making the final call. In Helena, I'm Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Libertarian Lyman Bishop of Kalispell is also on the ballot for governor, and if you haven't registered to vote, you can still do it in person at county election offices.
Well, it's the latest and what could be the last poll done before next week's election.
The Mountain States poll conducted by Montana State University Billings shows all three major Montana races extremely close.
MTN's Russ Rasinger reports that Montanans also seem to be leaning towards legalizing marijuana.
Like the other polls that have been conducted, the 33rd edition of the Mountain States poll conducted here at Montana State University Billings shows that Montana's main races are extremely close.
We get the expected splits for self-identified Republicans, Democrats, but
The results for the poll come from phone calls that MSUB political science students made between October 19th and the 24th with 546 likely Montana voters. Political science professor Jason Atkins directed the poll.
How accurate has it been traditionally?
traditionally fairly accurate. I mean, within a few points and definitely within the margin of error.
In Montana's battle for Senate, one of the most watched and expensive races in the country, Democrat Steve Bullock is narrowly on top of Republican incumbent Steve Daines, 48 to 47%, with 5% still undecided. The race for governor, tied. Both Mike Cooney and Greg Gianforte at 45%, but 9% were undecided. Republican Matt Rosendale led the poll in the race for Montana's lone House seat by a percentage point over Kathleen Williams. But the main takeaway that all three races are too close to predict.
Everything's essentially a dead heat or 1 point advantage.
The poll did show strong support for the legalization of marijuana, with 54% saying they've already voted for or will vote for it. Meanwhile, 52% said they oppose LR 130, which removes the authority of cities and counties to regulate firearms. Atkins says many respondents seem confused about the measure. As for the race for president, the poll shows Republican Donald Trump on top of Joe Biden, 52 to 47% in Montana. Atkins believes the turnout of young voters between the age of 18 and 34 will have a lot to do with how many of the races actually turn out.
It can really swing some of these close races, not only in Montana, but nationwide.
The poll has a margin of error, plus or minus 4.2%. On the campus of Montana State University Billings, I'm Russ Riesinger reporting for MTN News.
Now, just as a reminder, that poll has a margin of error of plus or minus 4.2%. We're going to take a quick break here on Montana This Morning. When we come back, Hurricane Zeta is still causing problems in the Gulf states. Coming up, find out how it may even affect voting.
But first, let's check in with CBS to find out what's happening at 7.
Good morning to you. Ahead on CBS This Morning, with 5 days before Election Day, 5 days, President Trump continues to downplay the impact of the pandemic. White House Chief of Staff, that's Mark Meadows, joins us to discuss the administration's response to the coronavirus and the upcoming election. Also, first on CBS This Morning, we speak to the head of the Louisville Metro Police Department's union about the Breonna Taylor investigation. Hear if he thinks that mistakes were made in this case. And we're going to talk to actress and producer, look at her, Kerry Washington, how she's doing her part to encourage people to vote, and why she says it's important that every American's voice be heard and counted. Kerry Washington is right about that. Your voice matters and it counts. We'll see you at 7 o'clock on the dot.